Welcome to Season 3 of the Spotlight series, Don't Just Survive, Thrive. Season 1 was launched to help people through the pandemic by talking to a variety of experts about topics such as psychology, finance, and health. Season 2 focused on more work-related issues, including HR, marketing, and leadership. Now it is time for Season 3. Season 3 is centred on the IT industry, specifically tech startups. There are also career spotlights where I talk to senior IT people about the secrets to their impressive career journeys. My name is Nicola Steel, founder of JJP Talent Solutions, an Australian IT recruitment company. For over 20 years, I've helped tech startups and innovative SMEs to attract, recruit, and retain technical talent. I hope you enjoy listening. I'm delighted to introduce Stewart Marshall. Stewart, AKA Mr. SaaS, is a commercial software strategist who helps software entrepreneurs increase their revenue, reduce their costs, and keep their fans raving about them. He's also the best-selling author of Doing IT for Money, a business leader's guide to improving profit per person. Stewart, thank you for joining me on Season 3, Episode 10 of the Spotlight series, Don't Just Survive, Thrive.
Thank you very much for the invitation. My pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So, Stewart, tell me a little bit more about your background and your career history.
Well, I was one of those kids who went through school and realised they didn't really fit in with the mainstream of education. So any sort of ideas of an academic future were dashed fairly early. And so I got to my late teens with no education other than a few O-levels and thought, I better go study something and learn something. So I ended up studying computing at the local college because it seemed like a good idea in the late 80s.
Wow.
And I found that it was a very comfortable place for me to be. And so I got a job at my local insurance company in rural Warwickshire for the Avon Insurance, and I had 5 years there, and then got a job with an Australian software company down sort of in Hemel Hempstead, north of London. Off the back of getting a job working for this software company, I eventually, 2000, came out to Australia.
So did you come to Australia through that Australian company?
Yeah.
In the UK?
Yeah. So I came here. I basically came on holiday, loved Australia, went back, emailed the boss and said, can I come and work for you in Sydney? And he emailed back and went, yeah, right. And so 6 months later, we were living in Sydney. And it really was little more than that. It was just seemed like a good idea at the time.
Wow.
So then I joined the development team in 2002-ish, joined the development team as, at the bottom of the ladder. And by the time I left in 2017, I kind of was running the team.
So you were there for 17 years with this same organisation?
Over 20 years in the end.
Yeah.
Well, they kept giving me interesting things to do, so I stayed.
Yeah, definitely. And moving here 20 years ago, I think that will be the moment to move to Australia from the UK.
It's not a bad place to be, all things considered.
It's a bit hot at the moment, but otherwise it is fantastic. So you worked there until 2017, and then I think you set up your own company. Is that right?
I got to the end of 2017. I was in my late 40s, and I kind of got the sort of idea at the beginning of 2017 that I'd done my dash. I'd committed a fair chunk of my career to the one organisation. I didn't see it going any further than it had gone. And you'd know this as a recruiter that, as a close to 50-year-old male in the IT industry, getting another role is a challenging prospect. So I came to the conclusion that if I was going to have a second career, so to speak, that I would have to make it. I'd have to come up with a world for myself and go inhabit it. So that's kind of what I did. And I came out to 2018 with the sudden realisation I had no idea how to go from where I was to somewhere else. And I didn't have a network. So I've been an R&D guy, a backroom R&D guy for 20 years. So I had 300 connections on LinkedIn. And I described my network one evening in early 2018 as everybody in this car.
Oh.
Which was slightly depressing in retrospect. But it's one of those things. You go, okay, well, these are things I now have to fix. I've got to go through a process. So went and did the KPI program, and they said write a book. So I wrote a book, and then it kind of progressed from there.
That's fantastic. And it's interesting to say that you made that move when you were in your late 40s, which some could say was quite a bold move, but obviously the right move to make. And you say also, me as a recruiter, knowing that I'm so much of an advocate about diversity, whether it's gender or getting more old people, not old people, sorry, Stewart. And what I meant is not just, people from 25 to 35. There's a need for a more diverse group of people within the IT industry, is what I was trying to say. Sorry, that that sounded rude.
No, not at all. But it is one of those things. It's something, I don't know, it's peculiar to the IT industry, but it's certainly very noticeable in IT that we have new tools are coming out all the time. So the guys that they want to employ are the guys that have learnt the new tools. And businesses kind of disregard the fact that we old fellas have been there, done that, and got it wrong a lot.
Yeah.
And we have many lessons that we carry with us that you sit there and you go and watch the young guys at work and you think, yeah, I wouldn't have done that. Yeah. And you watch them go through the same process that you did 20 years ago.
A bit like a parent watching their children.
Yeah, it's much like that.
But also having those war wounds, and also, I know I placed a guy who was significantly older than you relatively recently. And what the client particularly liked about him is that he brought a level of calmness when everyone was running around like headless chickens, thinking the sky was falling in. He'd be like, okay, it's fine. We can solve this. It isn't a problem because, like you say, he's seen those issues before.
Well, it's funny. I've just written a script this morning for a video that I'm doing, and it's about bugs. And we typically think of bugs in software as a bad thing and a bit of a crisis that and stuff we need to. It's a showstopper. We've got to fix this, and yeah, rightly so. But there's another aspect to it, which when you look at it and say objectively, actually, it's an opportunity to connect with the client, deliver really great service, and build on a relationship and keep them on side for many years to come. But we get locked in this world of crisis and no, it's a disaster, and it's not. It's fine. Well, keep calm and carry on, as our forebears would say.
Absolutely, definitely. So, Stewart, you've got 30 years in software?
Something like that. Yeah, close to 30 years in software, one form or another.
So, what really attracted you to the world of software, apart from, as you said, you weren't particularly academic, and particularly with regards to SaaS?
Well, I'm not so sure that anything attracted me to it. I had a go at it, found that I did it quite well, and really quite liked it. And it was just I didn't know that I liked it right up until the point I discovered that I did. And it was kind of that. I had a lecturer at college, a chap named Lewis Stevenson. It was this a very small guy with a large moustache and a appallingly bad brown suit that he insisted on wearing, who taught me Pascal. And he was a lovely fella. And I remember my mom went along to the teachers' evening, and she met Lewis. And Lewis just said to her, "He's found his niche." And that was it. That was essentially the extent of the conversation. He's in the right place. Let him carry on. He's fine. And that was kind of it for me. As soon as I got into the world of software, it was where I felt very comfortable.
That's fantastic. It must have been a relief for your mum as well, that she's like, right, Stewart's finally found his place.
It was. Yeah. Well, we were all happy with the outcome, frankly.
And I think the lesson that you learn from that as well is try new things. You might not like them, but there's a good chance, like you did with software, it's like, wow, eureka, this is the place where I need to be. So that's fantastic. And it brought you to Australia as well.
Yeah, it's turned out well.
Definitely.
I consider myself to be the personification of it seemed like a good idea at the time. So, I'm comfortable with where things have turned to so far.
Yes, I'm a bit like that. It seemed like a good idea at the time. So, and if it is a mistake, you can only learn from it. So that's fantastic. So now you've had your own business for 2-3 years?
3 years, coming up 3 years.
Tell me a little bit more about what you do in that business.
So it turns out that I happen to be in the right place at the right time. And SaaS is, or the creation of software in general, let's say, is exploding. It's the modern gold rush. And every man and his dog is out there thinking, gosh, I can make a buck doing that. And there's a whole bunch of people who are domain experts, fantastic knowledge in their space, who think, I know, I can deliver better service if I create some software and present it to the public and try and sell it. Of course, and the idea is fantastic, and I applaud it greatly. The reality, of course, is vastly different from that, which is that you can hemorrhage enormous amounts of money on software developers without any real effort, and you can spend 6 months and a couple of $100,000 and find that you've got nothing. And that, unfortunately, is a horribly common story, and one that I hear about, or if not weekly, certainly every couple of weeks or so. A little story pops up about somebody who did this and whatever. I was chatting to someone the other day, and they said, "Oh, well, this is the situation we're in." Oh, well, how did you get here? Did you not have a spec? No. Well, okay. And you look at it and think, well, gosh, these are the most basic of things that anybody with half an hour's experience in the software world would say, no, you need to do that. You need to do it. And what we find is that there's an enormous number of people who are in the business now who have just come into it with no knowledge and are learning really in a very hard way. So my aim and my target is to help people who are going through that process, to help them sort themselves out, get organised, and start building a long-term future into it, rather than this sort of short piecemeal approach they take of the next step and the next step and the next step. So my job is to basically get them organised.
It's a bit like my job as well. Well, getting people, pointing them in the right direction with the right information. But sometimes you can take a horse to water and you can't make it drink. But one of the stats I saw, I think it was on your LinkedIn profile, that over 90% of SaaS businesses fail within 3 years. What would you say were the three main reasons for that?
The three main reasons. I mean, I have a list of sort of 7 common mistakes.
Okay.
But I could get 10, right, or 15 or 20. I mean, there are a whole bunch of stuff that people do, but I mean, it generally sort of falls down to this basic idea that they're not organised in their development, and it's massively expensive. It's the biggest cost they will incur in their existence is creating software and owning software. It's just an expensive game to be in. It's why we pay good money for it, and so on. And what you find is that they don't properly plan, they're not properly engaged, they haven't thought it through, they haven't got the right team. And so they end up in a world full of development delays and where they make the wrong thing. I mean, this is a really big problem, right? They actually make software that nobody really wants to use. Or they get into a market where there's a massive amount of competition. And so, for example, there's 3,700 individual CRMs listed on Capterra. Now, I mean, there's a sign of a big market and a saturated one. So they end up in a situation where they've got massive budget overruns. Everything is slow. It's just disorganized on the development front. And then because they haven't niched properly and they haven't understood their target market properly, they end up in a situation where they've got lots of low-grade prospects coming into the top of the funnel. And they come in and they really don't want to spend the right amount of money because they're not a good fit for the product that's being built. And even if they do, the net result is that they sort of stay around for a little bit. They're not that keen. It's not that good. The software hasn't been built, hasn't got them in mind. They haven't created the help documentation, tutorials, proper support systems, forums, a decent community, or anything like that. And so the customers disappear. And so this year's revenue, which looks great, is not next year's expected revenue because the churn rate is too high and the customers are dropping off. So they then spend massive amounts of money on marketing, filling the top of the funnel with poor grade customers again. And so this sort of vicious circle carries on. And that feeds into the development issues because low grade customers just say, I want this. And they go through the process of saying, I better do that to please this customer. I'll win that customer. So then they overspend on development again. They build something that somebody doesn't. And so there's this horrible vicious circle where they're serving the wrong people and they're giving them the wrong thing. Whereas they go through the process from the other point of view and get good customers, find the right customers whose problems they're going to solve and the needs they're going to deliver on, then people will pay good money for that. And if they're paying good money for it and getting a good service, they'll stick around.
So are you it's getting the wrong customers, but also I read today, I think it was on LinkedIn, that an MVP today is different to what an MVP was 5 years ago. That it was more basic, you'd get user feedback, you'd improve, and it was very iterative. I can't speak today, Stewart. But nowadays it has to, well, a lot of companies, a lot of founders have it all shiny and ready to go, but haven't actually got the user feedback and aren't actually solving a problem that actually exists. Would that ring true from your experience?
I can't talk with authority about the state of MVPs particularly, but it depends. So SaaS comes in kind of there's three kind of variations of it, if you like. There's the mass market ones that we understand, the Zooms of the world, Gmail, for example. You know, the mass market, high volume, low cost products, and they take an iterative process really well. You can go out, if it doesn't work for 3 weeks, you come in, make a change to your website, to your messaging, whatever's going on. You can make small change tests, and that's fine. That works really well. If your vertical niche, where you're targeting a specific market, then you tend to make a bigger product. It's more expensive to create. And so there tends to be a lot more market research up front, greater identification of the problem. And then you get a much better market fit with the product that's delivered. And the other side of that is that the aesthetic of that is less important, because the value proposition isn't based on whether 1 million people are going to like it. And, you know, a 20,000 drop off because of a piece of poor UI costs a bunch of, you know, it just doesn't work that way. People are saying, well, I'm looking at the value proposition for the software. It's going to solve my needs. I'm going to spend 50,000 on it a month. No problem. That's the one for me. If there's a bit of UI that's a problem, whatever. It's largely irrelevant. So it depends on your market segmentation as to how you attack these things.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So in terms of you solving these problems and mistakes that are made by these SaaS businesses, what do you do? How do you help them?
Well, this depends largely on where they are in the process. So, as I say, my primary aim is organisation, getting focus, because there are some basics that they need to get right. And the first is understanding their target market. That's just an absolute must. If you haven't worked out who you're going to sell to, then you can't possibly make software to serve their needs. And so this idea of there's a virtuous circle here where the sales guys are going out and saying, no, these are the needs we're seeing. These are genuine needs we're seeing. And they're feeding back into the software. That's creating better software. It's creating a better sales cycle and so on. So that's my number one job, is to get them focused and get their business, every single part of the business, the sales side, the development side, whichever it might be, get that focused on this single core part of the service. And I have a 4-point methodology, which is the people, the platform, the promotion, and the partners. And the idea being that you need to focus on the right people. If you focus on the right people, build a community, get them together, get them working as a unit, then they will feed into your platform and your platform will help them. If you get those two going, then once we start getting the story together for our marketing and we start promoting the product properly, we've got a story that makes sense because it makes sense to our target market, and so we go through. Now, the fourth part in the pile is understanding partnerships, and this is crucial in software. If we're in the mass market, high volume, low value thing, then partnerships are largely unimportant or less important. I think it's probably a fair thing to say. If you're in the world of the type vertical niche or a service-based SaaS, then partnerships are hugely important because somebody has to do your work for you and somebody has to help you scale. And if you try and scale yourself, what that does is put enormous stress on your resources, your time, your energy, and everything else. It's a far easier world if you can get somebody to distribute your software for you, and they can take all the training revenue and other such things, and you can focus on building really good quality tools and providing a good quality platform. And then you get a much easier world of scale. So those are the 4 principles that we go through. And it really then depends on where each customer is in the process and where they are in their lifespan as to which is the one we need to attack first. So talking to a new client yesterday, almost certainly the platform is fine as it stands. There's little or nothing that really ought to be done. So this is going to be about how we position the product. So day one, this is messaging. Here's a product that does this stuff. Who are we going to sell it to? That's sort of kind of job number one. Working as my outside roles as a director of a charity called Create Care, we're going through the MVP process there. The first job is to tidy up the world that they're in at the moment. So I'm a recent acquisition. So my job is to get their MVP back on track. We know the target market because it's a charity. We know exactly what we're doing. Our job now is to provide the first basic MVP so that we can get on and get some stuff moving.
That makes total sense. And you're looking at it not just from the software perspective, you're looking at it in a more holistic kind of viewpoint.
Absolutely. Absolutely. About the importance of the second S. SaaS is software as a service. And if you're not focused on the second S, if service is not high on your pile of things to be worried about, then the software is largely irrelevant. You are going to go out of business very, very quickly. And the reason for this is that most SaaS businesses have a minimum of 10 competitors. As I was saying earlier, there's 3,700 CRMs, 500, I think, 500 and some odd project management tools. The numbers are insane. So you're not going to survive by piling it high and selling it cheap for the majority of cases. It's going to have to be, you're going to have to provide a good quality service or people are just going to go elsewhere.
What it should maybe be is rather than capital S, lowercase a's and capital S, it should be the first S should be lowercase because really the biggest, most important is the service rather than just the software.
The software is just a means to an end. It's I describe the software world as really little different than manufacturing.
Yeah. So it's about the people that you're servicing, basically.
Well, they pay the bills.
Well, absolutely. And again, similarly, obviously, recruitment and software are two completely different things, but at the heart of it is the people, which is really, what you're creating your product or your service for.
Well, I talk a lot about the need for empathy, and historically, I'm a member of an industry that has overpromised and underdelivered. And it's got a fantastic track record of doing that. But it's sorting its act out and it's improving as we go on. But one of the big problems we have within the industry is that we have software developers who never meet customers, and they have no. This is not to be critical of them in any sense. They just have no understanding or limited understanding of the people whose problem they're solving. And you look at it from that point of view and say, well, if that's the case, how can they possibly really understand the need? What's driving how they design the software, how they put the screens together, how they design the flow? They don't know what these people are doing day in, day out. And without that knowledge and without that understanding, it's very difficult to make something that's compelling.
And this is a generalization, but developers quite often by their nature are quite introverted and probably don't want to meet customers. That is a generalization.
It's a very, very harsh generalisation, Nick, and one that's entirely accurate, I think.
But in the main, most developers aren't terribly keen on meeting customers. So how do you think that problem can be overcome?
I think it doesn't matter what they want. I think it has to be part of their job.
Okay.
Now look, that's not to say that every single developer you're going to roll out, put them on the local bus and pack them off to customers. I don't think that's the case. But there's certainly a much greater demand for it and certainly a much greater need for it, in my opinion. And it would do a lot of software businesses a lot of good if the guys at the sharp end of development were to get out there and spend some time in customer land. They would have a much, much greater understanding of what they're doing.
Absolutely. And on the proviso that they're not there to sell or upsell or anything, they're there to really get under the hood of their customers. So not kind of a multifaceted role of software and sales.
No, it's for the good of both of them that they have this engagement. I can't think of any other design world or any other sort of product creation world where the people doing the work wouldn't really be heavily invested in the people that they're doing the work for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Definitely.
you look at it. You say, well, look at it. I mean, I equate software to building houses or to building in general, and we all know that the people who build houses actually live in them. Yeah, and the people who design houses live in them. Yeah, it's this idea. We do the decorating last. We don't design the screen before we put the plumbing in. It's that kind of stuff. There's a lot of simile to it, and the more empathetic we can be on the technical side of software, the better off we'd be.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Stewart, you've got nearly 30 years experience. What have been the main highlights and also challenges of your career so far, and also as an entrepreneur as well?
Well, I mean, career highlight for me was Visual Lancer. That was having worked for Lancer for however many years, to get the opportunity in 2013 to lead the development of the next big thing, and say, okay, here's 20 years of software, 20, and then 25 years of software. A customer base dating back to 1988, and literally customers who've been customers for 25 years, and saying, okay, we're going to take everything we've done, and we're now going to rebadge that for the modern world, and that was an extraordinary challenge, and it was a 4-year project, essentially.
Yeah.
An extraordinary, and very proud of the results. Fantastic team that I got to work with, some of the best developers I've ever encountered. Challenges, I don't know, too many to mention, I suppose, and no one would stand out. I mean, it's just the usual trials and tribulations of writing software, which is one of the great lessons in humility. That you get up every morning prepared to fail. That is the nature of R&D.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to go to work, and the vast majority of what you do that day will be rubbish, and you'll have days when you produce an enormous amount of stuff that's great, and you'll get in the next day having got to the end of that piece, and you're back to square one on the next bit, and so it goes. So, I mean, the challenges in that sense are really having to learn to live with your own fallibility.
Yes. And I guess that's not just a lesson in software, that's a lesson in life to a certain extent, that it's never going to be perfect every single day. Some days are going to be terrific, some days are going to be terrible.
Software is full of terrible days.
Yeah.
I mean, the usual sort of rules when somebody says, "Oh, somebody just says we've got a crash," you're like, "Okay, we better fix that," and then you spend 4 hours trying to work out where it's coming from and what causes it and what set of circumstances create this situation, and then you find it and you go, "Oh, look, yeah, I got those 2 lines the wrong way around." And
So
you make one tiny change, and the boss is like, "How's it taking you so long?" You're like,
So it's like being a detective.
In some senses, yeah, I guess.
Yeah. And Stewart, what would you say are the secrets behind your success, both in software and again, running your own business?
Oh gosh, I should have some profoundly intelligent comment to make now, shouldn't I? But I genuinely don't. For me, it's just what I love to do. So I suppose, if anything, I'm just in my right place. This is my happy place. Somebody, so I think it's my wife actually, I think, if I remember rightly, was asked me what I'd like to do for a living one day many years ago. I said, I'd like to write. So, I said, what about? And I said, I genuinely don't know, but I imagine it's probably this. And so it has. Yeah, I mean, so it's turned out. For me, I'm just doing what I like to do. So I haven't worked a day in my life, I suppose.
That's fantastic. That's everyone's dream, isn't it? And,
nothing's ever free, though, right? I mean, that comes at a cost, which is when you fall out of love with your work, you're falling out of love with everything. Yeah, and I've had my moments over the years. I've had some bad times, but you battle through them. You find your way through, and you go back. No, so this is my happy place. I'm not going to let somebody else trash it for me. It's mine.
That's great. And that you're getting up and doing what you love every day, not just doing it for money and like your book. But I mean, again, I'm kind of the same. I've been doing this for, golly, it's nearly 22 years now, next in January. But I love kind of finding, I'm a bit of a nosy Parker, to tell you the truth, Stewart. So I love talking to people and finding out what their motivations are and their backgrounds and everything. So it's again a kind of dream job for me, talking to lots of different people.
Yeah, I mean, people give me money for this stuff. It's awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, what do you reckon? I think this. Have some money. Okay. Yeah. Happy days.
You're not exactly. But if you could turn back the clock, would you do anything differently?
I would have done a whole bunch of stuff differently at the time. As individual, you can look back at individual things and go, yeah, that was a bit of I didn't handle that conversation particularly well, and so on. But with the benefit of hindsight and being where I am today and everything that's gone on, no, because everything that's gone before has been a platform for today, and I'm reasonably optimistic about tomorrow. So no, I think it would be extraordinarily greedy to want to change the path I've taken.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I've talked to a lot of people for this podcast series, and when I've asked them that particular question, they've pretty much said the same thing. Yeah, I've made mistakes, but I've learned from them. And no, I wouldn't do it differently, because without that mistake, I would never have learned.
Yeah, we're a product of our environment.
Yeah. And like I always say, I've learned so much from my mistakes. I might make a few more, but
I imagine I've got many, many more to go. I'm still learning. I'm in a whole new career, and I'm 3 years in, and the first year of that was really just education and reinvention and writing the book and everything else. So I'm a couple of years in. I'm learning my craft. I'm making mistake after mistake. As somebody taught me to say, I'm formerly the world's worst salesman. That's no longer the case. I used to be the world's worst. I used to be the world's worst lead generator, but I'm getting better and better. There are things I could improve. There are things I would do differently because whatever. But I'm going to make mistakes. But there you go.
Well, my world's worst, going a little bit off piste here. I was the world's worst waitress. I was terrible. Absolutely useless. Do you remember Mrs. Overall?
I do remember Mrs. Overall.
I'd be dropping things and everything. It was just, but I managed to get away with my total incompetence with charm. I think people felt sorry for me because I was so useless.
I had a job at a country club once. We had a local country club just up the road from where I lived, and I got a job there working behind the bar. And I never worked behind a bar before. And they gave me a little puce jacket, and I was 6'1", weighed about 70 kilos, so arms that went on into the distance, and a jacket that was hideously too small. And I stood behind the bar for 4 hours, and I think I served 7 drinks in that time.
Oh my goodness!
I was so bored. I was lighting matches and putting them in the ashtray to give me an excuse to clean the ashtray.
You'd have looked like Mr. Tickle with these long arms.
Yeah, probably not dissimilar actually.
But that was another of my rubbish jobs. That
no, my worst job ever was as a stock taker for a frozen food company. That's my worst job ever. That was terrible.
Oh, I worked in the sandwich factory, the Walker Sandwich Factory in Leicester. That was pretty hideous. But
frozen food company.
You have to do a lot of bad jobs before you discover where you want to be, really. So, so anyway, sorry, I went totally off piste with my poor waitressing career. So if I go to a restaurant now and somebody drops something or makes a mistake, I'm like, don't you worry about that. I was far worse. But coming back to you, so your book, doing IT for money.
Or possibly doing it for money. I'm never quite sure.
Well, do you know?
I think it was intentionally ambiguous.
And I was going to ask you that question. So the question I was going to ask was, would you prefer me to call your book Doing It for Money or Doing IT for Money?
I think doing it, I think, is probably my preferred. But the duality is intentional, really, because it is about. Somebody said, "What's it about?" And I said, "It's about my life in prostitution." But it comes in many forms, right? But no, so I mean, the point of the book really was, having come out of 20 years of making software, that to me the idea that businesses should be engaging in innovation and making software to solve their problems, to give them an advantage over the opposition, all of that stuff, that seemed to me to be entirely sensible.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea that you were doing IT for the purposes of making money and doing it to make money was kind of like, same idea.
Yeah.
And so I wrote the book, and it was really a book aimed for people who didn't get IT, of which there are many. And there are many, many business leaders running businesses, running $20, $30, $40 million businesses, that sort of size, who look at a laptop and just think of it as this horrible expense. They just keep spending money on technology. They get no bloody value from it whatsoever, and so on. And it's like, well, you don't quite understand, do you? So I better write a book about this. So it was the non-IT person's book about IT.
Yeah.
And it's an entirely non-technical book that makes tries to make cogent arguments as to why you should do something and why you should put a good laptop on someone's desk. For example, the average salary in Australia is about 80 grand, I think, something like that. So by the time we annualise it, add in workers' comp and all the other bits, for the simple maths, let's say 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
So we sit someone down at a desk for 3 years. We pay them $100,000 every year, and we give them a laptop so they can go and do their job to the best of their ability. And then we try and save $500 on it.
Mm.
And you look at that and you go, wouldn't it just be better to give them the best one possible so that they could be as effective as possible? Surely, with 300,000 versus this little $500, just spend the money, just spend that bit extra, make that bit of effort. It's those kind of simple things.
I'm laughing because I'm a Yorkshire lass. And Yorkshire lasses don't like, people from Yorkshire don't like spending money. And when you and I started this call, you asked me how I was. And I said, I'm absolutely boiling because I don't put the aircon on because it costs money. And then my brain doesn't work properly. So you've made me think I really do need to invest in that aircon machine because it would make so much more sense. And you're there in your aircon's paradise.
Very pleasant, I might say.
Yes, absolutely. And also your book, I really enjoyed that Stewart sense of humour throughout.
I have no idea what that means, but thank you.
But your personality, your sense of humour is very much there. It's not a dry IT handbook manual kind of thing. There's a sense of humour in that, and obviously learning opportunities as well. So,
as you rightly point out, IT is a notoriously dry subject matter. There's a chap named Doyle Bueller, who's a marketing guy at WA. He refers to me as the rock star IT guy.
Ooh.
Oh no, bless you. Thank you, Doyle. He's, but there is this perception about IT that it is so dry because it's inhabited by the people we were talking about earlier, who sort of sit there in the corner and they've got 3 friends, 2 of which are teddy bears. And the third is the plant on their desk. Is that that kind of perception? And it's a terrible subject. It's deeply dull, and I'm fairly certain I say this in the book that that's kind of as it should be. Its purpose in life is to be deeply dull. It's just infrastructure. It permeates your business. It looks after you. Just it's dull.
Mm-hmm.
There really isn't an exciting subject in that sense. So if you're going to try and present it to somebody and say, look, this is something you need to engage with, then you need to find the funny things that are in there. And there are, but I mean, some of them are in jokes, right? And when there's a whole bunch of stuff that programmers wet themselves about that other people think, okay, yeah, we need to have a chat. But mean, I wrote 3 pages on why I nearly called the book 256 Shades of Grey.
Oh, yes. And I saw the grey and the different shades on that. I was trying to remember there was grey, but I couldn't remember the subject matter.
Yeah, well, at the time, 50 Shades of Grey was very big. And so I thought, well, maybe I can get in on that kind of way. So 256 Shades of Grey. But, I bottled out in the end, I think.
Well, it probably was a good idea not calling it that, because that was so 2012 or 2013, whenever it came out, that it would just seem really old-fashioned now. But I remember at the time, it wouldn't have that much longevity. So, yeah, going very much in fashions and trends and what have you. And also, obviously, I talk to developers every day, and I think the kind of theme is they are becoming more sociable than what you said about the teddy bears and the plants of, 20 odd years ago, that there's more focus on that collaboration and
the
what have
plants,
you.
the new edition, they didn't have the plant 20 years ago.
Anyway,
No green space.
Pardon?
No green space.
No green space.
No, they just put a little cubicle.
Oh, golly. I'm so glad that although at the moment I might like a cubicle because it would come with aircon, but anyway. So, Stewart, you seem to have your fingers in lots and lots of pies. You're a board member, you're a lecturer, you're a speaker, you're a contributor. Tell me more about all these different activities, and basically, how do you find the time to do them all?
It looks like I do a lot, but they're fairly intermittent things, fortunately. So I get to focus most of my time on my core activity of doing what I like. The charity is certainly becoming a more demanding mistress, or will certainly over the next few months become a more demanding mistress, because there's work to be done, and we're not going to help any orphaned and vulnerable children if we don't. So that's fine. Lecturing has taken a back seat this year, obviously, because of COVID has prevented everything. And I actually pulled the plug on my contributing to magazines at the end of last year. I've been fortunate that I've been allowed to focus this year, which is good. So, whilst COVID hasn't been anybody's friend, particularly mine included, it's given me a chance to focus and to build Mr. SaaS brand and spend more time building YouTube channels and whatever else. So I'm fortunate in some senses that even though I do lots of bits and bobs here or there, that each of them individually doesn't take up much time.
Mm-hmm.
That means I get to be seen everywhere, which is kind of nice.
Oh, yes, definitely. Oh, I've forgotten what I was going to say now. You said something that made me think. Anyway, sorry, I'll obviously edit that bit out.
No, keep it in. It's authentic. People like that.
But I've completely forgotten what I was going to say, and I think it is the heat, and I definitely need to get that aircon machine.
There we go. My social service for the day.
Actually, I know what it was. It was about COVID and how this year has been, I think, a really interesting year, and there've been some kind of blessings as well.
Well,
so I know for some people it's been terrible, and
it's been hugely horrible for a whole bunch of people. Undoubtedly, a lot of people are doing it very tough this year. But if I stick to my core area, my core arena, if you like, this is actually a time of great opportunity.
Mm.
And the reason I say that is this: that we are right now in the middle of one of the worst recessions we've known for many years, but we are also in the middle of the greatest technological advance, certainly in the last 40 years, and probably historically ever. And that means you can view the world from 2 points of view. You can either look at it from the point of view of there is a storm outside, I'm going to hunker down and wait for it to pass and hope I survive, or you can be like the fisherman and mend your nets and get yourself ready for the better weather so that you can go out and be the guy with the big catch. And those who don't get that will do the former, and a lot of them will go out of business. People will suffer because they're not investing in the future. Now, that's not to say that investing in the future is easy or that it should come naturally to people, because it doesn't. But those who get it, those who understand the opportunity they've been presented with, will take it, and they will be in a good position for when the lights come back on, and they will surge ahead of the competition because they've done the work now. Those who come back out into the bright light and go, well, that was horrible, right, now let's start again, will find themselves behind. So as horrible as it's been, we're not going to return to a new normal, so to the old normal. The way things were, there's too much desire to move on. So we're going to see a whole bunch of change, whatever that might be. All my futurists mates say, it's the same as usual, which is, we think this might happen. We really don't know. So we're going to go and find out. And, we have a fantastic opportunity to build the world as we want to see it.
Yes, I think it's given an opportunity, and I totally agree with you. And over the last 8 months, I've been just looking at things differently. And I don't want to be like a mole coming out of the hole into the bright lights, as you say, going, oh my goodness, what's been going on? I want to see that kind of brave new world that we will see, and we are starting to see, I think.
Yeah, I'm certainly seeing the green shoots now. A lot.
Yeah.
There was a lot of, going back sort of 2 months or so, there was a lot of not this year, not this year, not this year, not this year, and it was a negative perspective. And now it's definitely next year, definitely next year, definitely next year. That kind of idea that we're into December. It's Australia. Nothing happens between now and the end of January, pretty much. We're gonna hang out a bit, get some skin cancer and whatever. And have a good time, and then come end of January, we're going to say, right, let's push on, let's get on with it. And that's the mentality I'm now beginning to see.
Yeah, although I've still made placements on Christmas Eve, so it doesn't all kind of completely stop. Although, admittedly, it goes a lot quieter.
Not for you, but down here in consultancy land, not much goes on. So.
Yeah, it's like the school holidays start next week, don't they? And then obviously not
tomorrow.
Oh golly! Well, my eldest is already finished, but anyway, well, thank you very much for sharing your insights, Stewart. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Absolutely not. You've asked me everything I could possibly want to tell you.
Awesome.
Other than a call out to Create Care. This is the best charity. It helps orphan and vulnerable children around the world. 140 million of them in care, desperately in need of lots and lots of help, and most of it isn't monetary. It's silly things like bits of material so they can make backpacks to carry books, pairs of shoes, sleeping mats, solar lamps, really small micro needs, little what we call small change, big impact, or small acts, big impact.
That's great.
We're going to be doing more and more of that over the coming years, so everybody get on board with that one.
Can you send me the information? And what I'll do is I'll put it in the show notes. And on a side note, my youngest is a total hoarder and needs to get rid of lots of fabric and clothes and what have you. I need to know where to send it. So that's her job for the coming weeks. Excellent. Thank you, Stewart.
No, thank you, Nicola. Entirely my pleasure.
Thank you. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. If you're looking for career advice, your next career opportunity, or to grow your tech team, then please call me, Nicola Steel, on 0499 773 546, or go to our website, jjptalent.com.au. The Don't Just Survive, Thrive podcast is part of the Spotlight series, which includes the YouTube channel, Spotlight on Software Development. If you want more insights into the software industry, particularly tech startups, then subscribe to the Spotlight on Software Development YouTube channel. Thank you for listening. Until next time.